up, Ionics? Welcome back to a new tutorial, and this one's going to be a bit longer, I guess, because I wanted to give you an example, an overview about how to structure a very common use case of an application, which means showing an introduction page, showing a login page, potentially also a sign up, and then moving into a tab area, which could also be just a side menu area or anything else, but just this whole example of the user flow for applications that require login and a great startup. So let's dive into this. There are a few things and actually a lot of code in this full navigation template, whatever you want to call it. So grab the code also below the video, link to the full tutorial on DevDectic if you want to follow along. Perhaps that's a great idea. So what you can do to start your application is just start an application based on the tabs template, because I actually found that by now the setup is fine. So we will use this and we can easily change this to have a login and introduction page before this. What we need as well is a little service which will hold our authentication state and also make HTTP requests to a little dummy API. And of course, we need 2 additional pages for the introduction and login. The inside area will stay just like it is. And then things get interesting because we're going to generate 3 guards. The first one will protect our inside area, the second one will show the introduction page automatically, and the third one will automatically log in users once they are logged in. And all of them implement directly the right interface. You can specify this on the command line as well, so -- implements can load. In the past we always used can activate, but I learned that can load is actually better. Can activate means it's a check if a route can be activated, and in the background actually the module will be loaded, so you can see this from the network tab of your browser. If you use the can load guard instead, the check will run, and if the result is false, the whole module of the page you want to access isn't even loaded. So that's actually a better way, since all our pages are modules with Ionic, lazy loaded modules, and that works great. So we got a blank Ionic tabs application right here. Maybe I could do this to the side so we always see the difference. I will experiment with this a bit. First of all, let's go to our app module and add the HTTP client module, because we're going to make an HTTP request and that's what we need. So add it to the imports of your page. Now we can move on to the app routing, which is now, well, with the 2 new pages and the empty pages going to the tabs. So we want to change this a bit. First of all, let's say we start on the login page, and therefore I will add a little redirect. Isn't this usually always in here? Strange. But we want to make the empty path redirect to login, and for the tabs we instead also want to use tabs. We can keep the introduction page in here, that's just fine. And now we will also apply our guards directly. Actually, no, not can load. It should be in like this. Hello. Okay, great. So the login page can usually load all the time, but if we haven't seen the introduction, we want to show the introduction screen before. So we will keep it kind of out of the routing, but automatically display it if the user hasn't seen it. And we can use our introduction guard for this. It's really a great way. Also, in a mobile application, imagine the user logged in, is using the application and somehow kills the application. If the user is now restarting the app, he or she would be back on the login screen. So what we can do now is add another guard, which is our auto login guard, to the login page, which will check if the user is already authenticated and directly bring him or her back into the application. And you can use multiple guards in can load, no problem. So tabs holds all the information of the inside area in our case, and therefore we want to protect it using our authentication guard, just like this. All the guards right now that we generated simply return true, so we don't have any problems. We can easily work with them like it is now. And once we reload the application, we are now finally on the login page. But before the login, we actually want to see the introduction. So let's move into our introduction guard. And I will remove a bit so it becomes actually more clear. We want to return an observable, I think that's right. And we also need to inject private router here in the constructor. There we go. All right, can load, should now check if we have seen the introduction. Therefore, we will use the, can we just get rid of all of this? We will use the capacitor storage because I just wanted to use capacitor, and we've used Ionic native way too often already in the past. So let's simply import plugins and destructure it to use the storage engine, which works a bit different because it's not really storing objects, but only strings. But anyway, we can still check has seen intro equals await storage get. And then the notation is a bit different. You put it like this. You want to check for a specific key, and I defined this as a const here because we will use this in other places and we don't want to use the string in different places. So just make stuff like this a const, export it, and then import it in the right places. Because we used await, we're going to have to use async in here. And actually, I just noticed that it's a promise, not an observable. So this will give us back a value, and this value has seen intro actually has another key inside called value, which is the real value. And as I said, in the storage we will only store strings. So normally this would be just a boolean, but in our case we really need to check for true. I feel kind of dumb for doing this, but that's just how Ionic storage works. You can still stringify JSON objects, so JSON stringify works totally fine, but we will store the string true, which is still fine. So if the user has already seen the introduction and wants to navigate to login, we should return true because it should be allowed. In the other case, we want to return true because the user shouldn't directly navigate to the login, but instead we will use our very own router, navigate by URL, and we want to navigate to /introduction. Yeah, and make sure you put the brackets in the right places. Now the problem with this approach is in some places, or we will use this in other places of the app as well, that on an Android device you can easily go back. For example, you log in, you're inside, you press back, you're back on login, and you don't really want this. In the past you could use the navigation controller, which you can still use with Ionic, to set the root application or the root page. And you can basically achieve the same result by saying replace URL true for any navigation that you use. This will just reset the navigation stack and replace the whole URL. So now if we try and open or refresh the login page, we should actually be, well, looks like I already got that key, so let me quickly remove this. If you're interested in this, you can actually find it within local storage and capacitor intro scene, so that's added by capacitor. I will just delete this one. I think this is all from other. Can we just remove everything? Anyway, let's keep it like this. And now we're finally on the introduction page because our authentication guard took over. It has seen that we haven't seen the intro, so the introduction is shown. Great, we got that logic in place, so let's move on to the introduction page. And I think if I'm going at this pace, it will be like an hour video, so I'll bring in some code. Once again, check out link below the video so you can easily follow along in a bit better way. For our introduction page, we want to implement two functions. We want to have a function to go to a next slide because sometimes you want to have buttons on that page to manually control an Ionic slide, which is a great Ion slides actually, which is a great component for an introduction page. You see this in all places. So let's call this one slides, and it's of the type Ion slides. Come on, Ion slides, not slide. And with that view child in place, we will access the view child in the HTML, and we can call slides next. Once we finish it, we will click the start button, and we are going to set once again the value, which we now have to import from our page from the introduction guard. But that's what I wanted to say. You could now also have has seen or whatever the name was in this place, but it's a lot easier to use a constant for keys like this. So import plugins and storage plugins once again, and then we can set that key. and then route forward. Let's inject the private router once again, router, and then we can navigate to the login and replace everything. So that's our logic in here. And for the content, we will simply use Ion slides. I will bring this in because I just wanted to use 2 images from the Ionic Academy as a quick example. Let's try and refresh. Maybe we should also save this. Right now, this doesn't actually look too good. So you really need to tweak the slides a bit. We do have slides, it looks okay, but the button here is above our elements. So we want to make this cover the whole page, and we want to give it a little background color, and you can do all of this from CSS. In fact, we can override the background color of Ion content, for example. We could change the bullet background colors of the Ion slides, which is this little ball. And we can also change the height of the view, which then becomes a view that looks a lot cooler. We got everything centered on the page, that's fine. We can also press next to go next. So this is now our introduction. And you see, if the user would open the application, there's no flash of the login page because we got that guard, which isn't even showing the login page. So that's really a great way to prevent pages from even being displayed for just a short amount of time. All right. So great login, great introduction, and on start we should hopefully get to our login page. And now we have set the key, we can refresh the page and the user wouldn't see the introduction again. So we're finished with the introduction and we can move on to the actual login. For this we need to take a little step back and move to our service that we generated, because within that service we also need a few things. First of all, we will also need access to the storage, and we will also set another token key because I just recommend that all the time. Then we will have 2 members here. We will have an isAuthenticated behavior subject. Behavior subject is a bit different from subject because it has an initial value, and we will set this initial value to null for a very specific reason that we will see later, and I will explain why. And also you could store your JSON web token locally in the service, you can write it to storage, you can do basically whatever you want. So then let's inject the HTTP client as usual, and we will create a few functions. We will load the token once the application starts. So let's call load token in here. We want to allow a login, and of course we also want a logout function. And I will bring in the code because that will make life a bit easier. So we're going to use a simple mock API called request.in. I have really no idea where I found this, and it gives a nice successful or unsuccessful login, and that's what I really wanted for this tutorial. So therefore, within the login, we will make a post request to the API route using the credentials. And actually the credentials for that API should be email and password. So let's say the type is email and password, more like this, I would say. And it will return an observable of the type any. All right, with the result, we want to add a little pipe block, because if you check out the result, it is token whatever. So we can map the data and extract the token from that object. Maybe we should add a few more operators from RxJS, like map tab and switch map. And then things get a bit more difficult. Map is just a plain mapping of data. Switch map means you switch from the original observable to a new observable. As you can see, we return a new observable because we want to set the data to the capacitor storage. And this call here, this set call, returns a promise, which is a bit difficult in the context of observables, but with from we can actually transform a promise to an observable, which means in the end we return a full new observable. And the inside area here was a promise, but we transformed it with from. Now we just need to import from somewhere. I think, where are my imports? This is really messed up here. So from RxJS. All right, that means in the end we have a different observable, but we can be sure that the first request is finished and that we've written the data to the storage. Then we will call our behavior subject and emit a new value with next, and that's the same we will do in the logout, but here we will emit false. So people, or we from code, can subscribe to the behavior subject from everywhere in our application, and with next we would always get a new value. And we can use this in our guards later on, which will really help our application. Okay, that also means that after a successful login, we have stored a token, so we can also load that token in the beginning. Remember, this could be a JSON Web Token to your real API. So once the application starts, we can once again get from the storage our token. It's a promise, so we need to await the result. The result is once again in token.value, and we will actually add a little lock to lock it out. Then you could store it locally. You can attach it to all further requests to your API. I got other tutorials about that as well. Just check them out on my channel. And of course, we can also set the authentication state to true since we got the token. You might want to add a little check if the token is still valid, but that's kind of easy for a JSON Web Token. And now finally on the logout, we will just remove this token from storage once again, and you see this const really was a great idea because we used it in a lot of places and you would have just an arbitrary string in all these places, which doesn't really look too good. So this one actually now returns a promise. I just want to add this so you're not confused about the usage of maybe a function that returns a promise or an observable. Really clean service so far. And we're already at 17 minutes, but we're on a good way, I would say. So let's move on to our login page. Okay, it's in pages. Login page, login module is the first one we go to because we need the reactive forms module. We'll actually make a kind of nice form with error messages as well. Yeah, maybe I should add it here. And therefore we need to add the reactive forms module. Now we can go to the login page and I will bring in a bit of stuff for the constructor. So we got all of that in place. Can we just add all missing imports? Yeah. Oh, it's never really working. I don't know, what's the path? 2 up, okay, great. With a form builder, we can now construct our form and we will just create it up here. Credentials will be a form group, and within our initialize, we can now create it. These credentials are actually the ones that will return a successful token. If you change anything in the field, it won't be a successful request. So because I couldn't really remember them, I just put them in here. Usually you wouldn't have them in here. The first one required an email, second one required a min link. We will see why this is important in our view later on, because we can have specific error messages for these errors. But to access them a bit easily or more easily, you should make them easily available. That was a bit easily too often. With a little getter. So to get the email, we will return the form element and here as well. Or the form control, actually, to put it right. So finally, we also need a login function, and within the login function, we just need to make the request through our service and handle the result. Success means we got a token, everything's fine, and we can route forward. Error case means, well, we should display an error. And that's what we can do with the following code. So we can first of all present a loading, which is a great idea because API calls might take like a few seconds depending on your connection. And for all of this, make sure you put await in here. I've seen examples where we haven't added await here and the API returned really quickly, and then you're trying to dismiss a loading once you're done, which wasn't even presented, which can lead to a lot of problems. So really make sure you always await until the promises are finished. And then we can send the value of our form group to the login service, and on a successful login, we just dismiss the loading and navigate to tabs. Once again, replace the URL. In the error case, we can simply dismiss the loading and show an error. And as you can see, even if we are using async await in these blocks, which usually just look like this for HTTP calls, you can always just add the async keyword in front of it to mark it as async. So that, okay, that's there we go. And with all of this in place, let's move to the login page. I will just implement the login because I'm pretty sure that you're able to implement the sign up after this. Just generate a new page and add the routing and then move to that page and build it accordingly to the login page. But the login page is the first and most important now. So we will start with a form. Form group is our credentials form, and on submit we want to call the login function. Great. Now we will use simple Ion items, I'd say, and Ion input. First one should have the type email. This will change the keyboard on a on a mobile device. I will not add any labels for this. I will just use a placeholder in this case, and the form control name is email. Great. Same for the second one, which is type text, so we don't really need it. Placeholder would be password. Actually, the type is password, so the characters are hidden. Yeah, placeholder, always great. And then copy this and copy that. Now we got the input fields in place, and we need a button to submit our form. To submit it, just use the type submit. If you want to have other buttons on this page, you should use the type button, because every button that has no type or the type submit will trigger the form if they're within the form. And of course, we only want this with one button, but the other button might, for example, show you a message like not yet a member, sign up. And for that, you of course don't want to trigger the submit action. But for the real submit button, we can now make it a block and put it on the disabled state until our credentials form is valid. As a quick example, I will also add two more buttons, for example, sign in with Google or sign in with Apple, which will now give us a view like this. Actually a nice basic view, but we can even improve this a bit more. So all of these things won't have any action, only the login, but we are not yet finished with that view. So I wanted to put a little background image on that page because I think that's a quite common case to have a background image on your login page. And we can do this by using Ion content. This first is just a bit about padding, and the -- background is setting the background image. You can use the URL to local file. I just used an image from Unsplash because I was kind of lazy and added this to make it fit the screen. It's not perfect, but it will show actually quite nice. You see, it looks better. We got a bit of padding, more padding to the top. We got padding on the sides. We got the background image, and the buttons now look a lot better. Now, what I also wanted to do is show specific errors for these error input fields. I think that's also a very common case, and we usually left this stuff out. So for each of our items, we'll create another div. And this is a bit tricky, so I will bring it in because I'm way too lazy. First of all, we only want to display this div if the email control was dirty or touched, which means the user put the cursor into it and navigated away or somehow changed it. So only in that case we want to display any kind of errors, and also only if we actually got errors. And once you're at that place, you can check for very specific errors. So for example, required or email. If one of these is available inside the errors object, you can display the according error for that case. Same for password. Once again, kind of same logic, but this time using the password control. And also checking password errors exists, and then using either required or min length to display different error messages. So out of the box, once again, this won't really look cool. You see the email is gone. The error is actually below the field. So there we go. Password needs to be 6 characters and email is invalid, but we can do a bit more to style this. So for all the errors, we will use a small font size, a color, making the background a bit of red and using a bit of padding, which results in errors that will now look like this or that. And I also wanted to apply a round border to this because all buttons have round borders. So therefore I put everything from the Ion items into a div class. Yeah, I'm from Germany, you know it already. Into an input group. And let's format everything. So there we go. Everything's inside an input group, and that input group will get a bit of background color and border radius. And we mark this overflow false because otherwise the items would actually go above this. Can we check it out? So if I would disable overflow, you see the borders of the Ion items are like this. So by saying overflow hidden, we can manage to make it look like this. And now we got nice error messages on that page to the user once the fields are touched. Or yeah, password is required, email is required, and there we go. Nice form validation, super quick and easy. All right, we're actually close to, well, close to the goal of this example. Let's try our login. On a successful login, yeah. I don't know why, but I usually get this error whenever I add a function to a service lately. Really no idea why. But we can already add a bit more code while this loads inside the tab 1 page. We just want to have a quick logout. We have added the function to the service already, so we can simply add our authentication service and the router. Make sure you await the promise, so really all the tokens from storage are gone, and then navigate back to slash or slash login would be kinda the same in our case. Now back to the login. Let's quickly also go to the tab 1 HTML and add our button. I will get rid of these things for now, whatever. So Ion button logout. Now the fun begins of securing our application. You already see we've loaded a token. We have no automatic login. We can now really look, cannot match any routes. Tabs, tab 1. Oh yeah, I made a mistake. Oh, a terrible mistake. Inside the tabs routing, we need to also change a bit because we have added tabs already to our app routing. So right here. That means if we navigate to /tabs, we will get to the tabs page or the tabs routing module, but at this pace, the first part of the URL is already resolved, which means we're basically left with the empty path in here. And if we start with tabs in here, we couldn't match any other path. So therefore, we can actually remove this because we will anyway get into the children. There's no match for an empty path in here, but at the end we have a redirect to tabs tab 1, and that should be fine. So that means now we can log in, and we're here tabs tab 1, tabs tab 2. The interesting thing is we can directly navigate to them, works fine as well. The problem is that we can log out and we can navigate there, and we're back inside because the area is not yet protected in any kind of way. We still need to apply our authentication guard now, which is a bit more tricky. So let's go to the guards and the authentication guard. Once again, we can get rid of a few things. Now we will inject our authentication service and the router. Can we get all missing imports once again? Oh, nice. It's actually the right import. So the fun begins. We want to check. The user enters this page and we need to check or we need to load the token if the token exists, and then check if the user is authenticated and then allow access or don't allow. And we do this by using our authentication service. Auth service.isAuthenticated and pipe the result. Now I will leave out a few things first of all to show you why it's not working. So map is authenticated. Can we just add the damn map? Is authenticated. We'll check if the user is authenticated. In that case, we can allow access to any page, and otherwise we will navigate back to the login and return false. Now let's also log out guard is authenticated. Come on. There we go. So let's try and access an inside page. What was it? It was like tabs, tab 1, guard null. Now, this is an interesting result because guard null means we actually get the very first value of the behavior subject. It should be true or false, but not null. And that's what I wanted to say in the beginning. We use this specific value null here, so within this pipe block, we can actually filter out the null value. So the value should really be unequal to null, and otherwise we will filter out that value. If we now try it once again, we see guard false. That's fine. If the result is false, we shouldn't be allowed, but I'm actually not sure. Did we press logout? Yeah, I think we kind of did. Let's try to log in. We see guard true, we see no login, and that is the second problem I wanted to show you. I can also do it like this now. The page isn't really displaying, although the guard is actually true. So I was really worried. So we have true, it returns true. Why isn't the page coming up? The problem in these cases is usually that the observable you return isn't completed, and the guard will only display the page if the observable is completed. And to do so, we add another block here, take one, which means we will only take one result. We filter out the null, so that's fine. And then we will just take true or false one time, and then the guard should be finished. And as a result, we're now able to get directly to tab 1. On the login page, we're able to log in and move into our app. We are able to refresh. We're able to log out, and let's see, we're not able to see the inside area anymore. And it is completely secured because we use the can load guard, so the module of the page isn't loading, the code is never available here within the network tab. So that's really a nice security. Now, this is our authentication guard, and the only thing that's missing is once we've logged in, and you imagine the user closes the application, starts the application again, and is back on the login screen. That's not really a great idea because we should automatically log in the user, and we will do this within our automatic login guard. This guard is actually mostly the same like our other guard, only that we will do things a bit different. So the first part is basically the same, just like before. Let's import a few things, add all missing imports and remove everything that we don't use, and then return whatever. Can we just silence this? Okay, so I feel like we're missing a little bracket. We're doing the same on the authenticated behavior subject. We filter out the value, we add take one because we learned from the past, and now we map the result. But now we want to map, if the user is authenticated, we want to forward him directly or her to the inside area and otherwise return false. So it's kind of like just the opposite. And therefore the code is just, if the user is authenticated, directly navigate to the tabs area. If the user is not authenticated, return true, which is kind of strange, but this just means, okay, you can access the login page. So we're very, very generous. And you see, we were authenticated and we immediately brought back here. That means, once again, no flash of pages that you don't want to see, which is really a great feature of our guards. And now log out, nothing happens, log in, we're logged in, trying to access the login page, automatically forwarded. And that's it for our Ionic 5 capacitor full app navigation template example. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want to see more and dive more into Ionic, check out my Ionic Academy as usual. And otherwise, if you got any other questions about templates like these that you would like to see, so really helping you to get started with Ionic in a better and faster way, let me know in the comments, and I wish you a lot of success with the starting point to your application. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and stay subscribed so you get notified about all the new tutorials, quick wins, and other app development and web development videos on this channel. If you want to learn more about Ionic with in-depth courses, a community of like-minded developers so you can learn and build your apps faster, you should definitely check out the Ionic Academy, which is my code school to help you with everything Ionic, with a huge library of courses, material, and a supportive Slack channel so we can get your app out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you inside the next video. Have a great day and happy coding. Simon.